Gücümüze güç katan 3 sevgili iyi niyet elçimiz, sevgili Songül Öden, Edis Görgülü ve HazalKaya ile birlikteyiz.
Hazal'a pas değil, gol atmış oldu.
Gol atmış. Benim anlatabileceğim çok şey var, söyleyeceğim çok şarkı var ama biz bunu konuştuk.
Azınlık, bütün kırılgan azınlıklar için nefret objesi olmak çok kolay.
Küfür etmeyeceğim, yayının sürekli kesilmesin, korkmayın.
50. yılınızla birlikte başlattığımız Kelebek Etkisi sohbetlerinin de ilk programı.
İhtiyacımız olan tek şey empati.
Bu manada bir kelebek etkisi yaratsak ne güzel olur.
Koronavirüs salgınıyla mücadelede eğer dışarıda olmak zorunda değilsek evde kalmak önemli.
Ancak evde kalmak bazı kadınlar ve çocuklar için şiddet riski taşıyor.
Türkiye'de resmi rakamlara göre aile içi şiddet yüzünden hayatını kaybeden kadınların %75'i evlerinde öldürülüyor.
Yani ev her kadın için en güvenli yer değildir.
Evde yalnız değilsiniz.
Bu zor günlerde de size yardım etmek için hazır bekleyen onlarca kurum var.
Risk altındaysanız hem mobil uygulamalar hem de acil destek hatları ile 7/24 yardım isteyebilirsiniz.
Alo 155 ile polise, Alo 183 ile Aile Bakanlığı'nın sosyal destek hattına ulaşabilirsiniz.
Bu konuda çalışan pek çok kadın derneği de sizin için telefonun diğer ucunda.
Eğer telefon edemiyorsanız İçişleri Bakanlığı'nın mobil uygulaması KADES'i de kullanabilirsiniz.
Akıllı telefonlarınızdan bir tıkla polise ve jandarmaya ulaşabilirsiniz.
Unutmayın, yalnız değilsiniz.
Bu mücadelede hep birlikteyiz.
Kimseyi geride bırakmayacağız.
Covid-19 salgınına mücadele için hiç olmadığımız kadar evdeyiz.
Evdeki görünmez emeğin de belki ilk kez bu kadar farkındayız.
Yemek, bulaşık, çamaşır, ütü, çocuk bakımı. Bunlar evdeki ortak sorumluluklarımız.
Bu süreç, kalıplaşmış toplumsal cinsiyet rollerini yıkmamız için önemli bir fırsat.
Evdeki rutin iş yükü sadece kadının omzunda değil, olmamalı. Bunun farkına varalım.
Çocuklarımızla bağlarımızı kuvvetlendirip onların eşitlik algısını da güçlendirelim.
Haydi hep birlikte krizi fırsata çevirelim. Bu zor günlerden daha güçlü ve eşit bir aile olarak çıkalım.
Evde eşitlik, aile içinde eşitlik, toplumda eşitlik demek. Eşitlik için erkek katılımı çok önemli. Haydi siz de katılın.
I promise I'm going to start. It's very hot, everybody. All right, distinguished guests, and those of us joining, those joining us virtually from Turkey and around the region via YouTube and social media. Greetings from Ankara, and welcome to the World Population Day 2022. My name is Afshin Yurdakul. I'm a journalist and news anchor, and it's my honor and pleasure to be on this stage today and to join you. This event is organized by the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, and the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany. We are at such a beautiful place this afternoon. I have to say it's a blessing. It's so hot. Being surrounded by lush greens is definitely a luxury. And we are at the garden of the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany. I know Ambassador Jürgen Schulz he is here with us today. And let's see, I learned how to say this. Dankeschön, Herr Botschafter Schulz, für Ihre Gastfreundschaft. I hope I did it well. Also joining us today are our esteemed guests, ambassadors, prominent representatives from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Family and Social Services, Presidency of Strategy and Budget, Turksat, members of international organizations, civil society organizations, academia, and my dear colleagues from the press. They're all here for this event, so thank you for making time this afternoon. November 15th will mark an important milestone for our planet. Why? Well, because the world population is set to reach 8 billion people, as the UNFPA announced for the first time this year on July 11th, which is the World Population Day. Indeed, our big human family is set to grow even more. Here are some numbers, some UN projections for you. 8.5 billion by 2030, 9.7 billion by the half of the century, and 10.4 billion by the end of it. So here we are today to discuss what a world of 8 billion means for people and the planet, and go beyond the numbers too. That's part of our effort today. We want to talk about why it matters to focus on people and not just population, and more and equal access to rights and opportunities for all. So at this critical juncture in history, the UNFPA has a call to make to all governments to pursue people-centered policies with sexual and reproductive health and rights at their core. So today we have an exciting agenda. Soon I'm going to invite to the stage our speakers for their opening remarks, and we'll have some surprise appearances too. You already know who they are, so it's not such a surprise, but we're happy they'll be able to join us. And then we'll move on to our panel discussion, which is scheduled to take place after our opening speeches. Before all of that, we have a video message. We'll bring you a video message, a World Population Day video by actress and comedian Aslı İnandık. She's a friend of UNFPA Türkiye and a strong supporter of UNFPA efforts too. So let's see what she has to say. Here we go.
Bugün Dünya Nüfus Günü. Birleşmiş Milletler Nüfus Fonu yani UNFPA tam da bugün açıkladı. Dünya 2022'nin ikinci yarısında 8 milyar nüfusa ulaşacak. 8 milyarlık bir gezegen. Peki bu insanlık için ne ifade ediyor? Öncelikle bu elbette kutlanası bir gün. Çünkü her birey çok değerli. Her birimiz insanlığa katkıda bulunuyoruz. Ayrıca son 11 yılda dünya 1 milyar kişiyle büyürken neler oldu? Yoksulluk azaldı. Sağlık alanındaki gelişmeler yaşam sürelerimizi uzattı. Anne ve bebek ölümlerini azalttı. Teknolojik gelişmeler hayatımızı kolaylaştırdı. Peki bütün bunlar yeterli mi? Elbette hayır. Bu yüzden de bugün aynı zamanda ciddi bir farkındalık fırsatı. Eminim sizin de aklınıza aynı sorular geliyordur. 8 milyar kişi için yeterli kaynak var mı bu dünyada? Dünya ne tür zorluklarla karşı karşıya? Bu nüfus artışı başta kadınlar ve kız çocukları olmak üzere kırılgan grupları nasıl etkileyecek mesela? Ya da insan hakları ihlalleri ne durumda? Yanıtların çoğu ne yazık ki olumsuz. İklim krizi, doğal kaynakların orantısız kullanımı, var olan eşitsizlikleri ve kırılganlıkları ne yazık ki daha da derinleştiriyor. Sonra dünya çapında 100 milyondan fazla insan zorla yerinden edilmiş durumda. Savaşlar ve göçler haliyle şiddeti ve ayrımcılığı besliyor. Evet, sağlık alanında yaşanan gelişmeler takdire şayan ama ne yazık ki bu gelişmelerden bütün toplumlar eşit şekilde yararlanamıyor. Toplumsal cinsiyet eşitsizliği hala tüm ağırlığıyla tam da dünyanın en ortasında durmaya devam ediyor. Cinsiyet, din, dil, ırk, cinsel yönelim, engellilik ve daha birçok sebeple çok sayıda insan hala şiddete ve ayrımcılığa uğruyor. Dünyada her 3 kadından biri şiddetin en az bir türüne maruz kalıyor. Türkiye'de ise her 10 kadından 4'ü. Her 5 kadından biri çocuk yaşta evleniyor. Bu kadınların 3'te biri de çocuk yaşta anne oluyor. Peki çözüm ne? Çözüm daha fazla insan ya da daha az insan değil esasen. Odaklanmamız gereken rakamlar da değil. Odaklanmamız gereken insanlar. Herkesin haklara ve fırsatlara daha fazla erişimi ve dünyadaki her bireyin daha adil, daha sürdürülebilir bir dünyadan eşit şekilde yararlanmayı hak ettiği gerçeği. İdeal bir dünyada 8 milyar insan, 8 milyar fırsat demek aslında. Bu yüzden de herkesin gerçekten sayıldığından emin olmalıyız. Ancak o zaman sağlığın, eğitimin, onurlu ve eşit bir yaşamın bir ayrıcalık ya da boş bir vaat değil, herkes için hak ve gerçek olduğu bir dünya kurabiliriz.
Well, thanks to Aslı İnandık for that message. It perfectly wraps up why we are here today. 8 billion people in an ideal world should mean 8 billion opportunities. Let's see how we can get there. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that this afternoon. I will first move to our opening speeches. For his opening remarks, I would like to first invite our host, Ambassador Jürgen Schulz, to the stage. You have 3 minutes, sir. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and first of all, a very warm welcome to all of you. Hoş geldiniz. Dear Hasan Mohtashami, dear representatives of the Turkish government, dear ambassadors, dear friends, guests, panelists, dear ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to see you all here in the garden of the German embassy today, and we are very honored that we have the opportunity to organize this event jointly with UNFPA this afternoon. We already have heard that on the 11th of July, we celebrated World Population Day. And this served as an opportunity to catalyze an informed conversation around population dynamics and demographic resilience in the lead up to the world reaching 8 billion people. As we have already heard, in November we are going to hit the 8 billion mark. And let's just remember that only a few years ago, in 2011, we hit the 7 billion mark. So in 11 years, the world has increased by 1 billion people. Let's think about that. That is quite incredible, and it has a lot of consequences across the board of political and social decision-making. So we find to mark World Population Day today is a wonderful opportunity to draw the attention of all stakeholders to the fact that every individual is unique and should be able to exercise the full range of rights, including sexual and reproductive health and rights. In public discourse, if we have a look at the discussions on these issues, demographic trends are often colored by value judgments, resulting in certain narratives. Some talk about population explosions, while falling fertility and growth rates continue to be regarded by others as signs of so-called demographic crises. Terms such as population aging suggest there is such a thing as a proper population size. They imply that developments are linear, whereas in reality, most developments are not. And precisely because of that tendency to paint demographic challenges in dark black, such narratives attract the attention of the public, which is to a certain extent good, because it attracts the attention it deserves. For the same reason, however, they are not good guidelines for adequate policies. Policy which is to have a decisive impact on tomorrow's better life quality should not be guided by exaggerations. And in my view, there are 3 aspects that seem to me personally key to the discussion of those issues. First of all, we need to have a discussion that is based on science and scientific evidence. We need to discuss developments and numbers that are real and not fiction or politically flawed. Secondly, we have to follow with great care the numbers, the statistics, the science, population. But what we, in the end, when it comes to policy making, really need to focus on is on the people rather than population, on the individual, on human rights, and that is, I think, a key challenge. And that is my last observation in that context. I think we cannot discuss these things in isolation. We have to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture, we are talking with UNFPA, we are in a United Nations context this afternoon. The bigger picture for all of us is, of course, the Agenda 2030 and its Sustainable Development Goals, because that is exactly about the individual rights and development. And these things need to go hand in hand. And if we look at the calendar, we have only 8 years to go. Quite a way ahead of us, but if we are serious about it, I think we can get there. But of course, the last 2 years dominated by COVID developments, have certainly not led to an increase in getting closer to that agenda. So we have to work even harder now after COVID has hopefully seen the worst, has left the worst behind us. In Germany, we try to take up exactly that thought in looking at these challenges in a holistic manner, striving for more sustainable answers. And the federal government, together with the German Bundesländer, coordinates an encompassing dialogue on these issues, on the problems which are interconnected, of course. And we established many discussion fora among practitioners, those in public administration and the research community. But I think we need to be realistic. We face unavoidable short-run and hard-to-influence long-run challenges. We need information, reflection, conversations to establish sound and evidence-based policies accepted by large majorities. Globally, democratic change is a permanent process that is changing in speed and direction and displays, of course, regional and socio-structural variations. Populations are never static, they are in motion everywhere. And with regard to the situation in many countries, we can see many demographic challenges, but literally no scenarios which would indicate that demographic factors are threatening our future altogether. So today's discussion may be a small but perfectly timed step to look at those problems, to inform us and find common ground on ways into a better future. I congratulate once again UNFPA for this initiative. I warmly, once again, welcome all of you at the German Embassy's garden, and I look forward to today's discussion. Thank you again for joining us, and have a good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Schultz, for your remarks. I'll move fast. Up next is our other host today, UNFPA Türkiye representative, Mr. Hasan Mohtashami. Please come up, the floor is yours.
Çok teşekkürler. Günaydın. Good afternoon. Thank you so very much for being with us today here in this beautiful garden of German Embassy. Appreciate everybody's presence here. Let me first recognize the presence of the government officials here. We have DG of Ministry of Family, the Vice President of Turkestat, DDG of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and other ministries, Ministry of Health and others. We welcome you and thank you for being here with us. I also welcome diplomatic members of diplomatic corps here and colleagues from the UN and ambassadors, and particularly I would like to register our appreciation and gratefulness to the German embassy here. Ambassador Schultz, we are honored and extremely grateful that you agreed to have this function in this beautiful garden and having a joint effort on this day. Germany has been a staunch supporter of UNFPA mandate globally on sexual and reproductive health and rights. A couple of examples of it is interesting. At the time of COVID, at the height of all these spending issues around the world, Germany stepped in and increased significantly their contributions to UNFPA on sexual and reproductive health, making Germany actually the top on the list of the UNFPA contributors in terms of regular resources of UNFPA. The other example I can give is that when we launched our State of World Population Report in April, the flagship report of UNFPA, our executive director main launch was in Germany with your minister, and in Berlin where the main launch happened there. So Germany and UNFPA has a long history, and we really truly appreciate having us today in this function. Thank you so very much. Also, I recognize the presence of academia, civil society, media personnel, and friends of UNFPA being with us today in this function. As explained earlier, the World Population Day actually was on 11th of July, but we moved it, delayed it a bit. It was Bayram and we couldn't have everybody around the table. So it's now we are commemorating the World Population Day today in this beautiful place. And the theme this year is extremely important, as highlighted by the ambassador and other in the videos as well. I vividly recall when we were commemorating World Population Day in 2011. I was then in Eswatini in Southern Africa, and the whole point of reaching 7 billion was the hype of the discussion. And only 11 years later, we are doing the same on the 8 billion. Just to give a bit of perspective, I collected the figures. Human population reached around 1 billion in middle 18th century, 1750s or those years. We reached the 2 billion in 1928, 170 years later. From 1928 to 1959, 30 years later, we reached 3 billion. And then in 70s, early 70s, 4 billion, 14 years later. 13 years later, 5 billion. 12 years later, 6 billion. 11 years later, 7 billion. And again, 11 years later, 8 billion. Quite a significant increase in the numbers. But again, the whole point about this and earlier functions when we were commemorating the 7 billion 11 years ago is that the discourse should not be around the numbers. This is not about how many we are. This is about what quality we are. The point of focusing on the number has created a bit of political discourse which was not healthy then, and it is not yet healthy, because you may recall in 60s and 70s there were discussions around population explosion and whether this population will have resources on Earth and so on and so forth. And there were policies adopted one after another based on this over-exaggerated discourse. One-child policy or two-child is enough, and the push for lowering fertility and lowering population growth in many parts of the world, in 60s, 70s, going to 80s. And now, we have the most diverse situation of the fertility. We have, on one hand, more than 60% of the countries or population in the world are facing a lower fertility rates, lower population growth. Aging is a topic for discussion in demographic discourse and population dynamics. And on the other hand, we still have groups of countries that are facing a significant high fertility and high population growth. For the first time in the history of human being, we have this dichotomy that we have a very low fertility in a group of countries and a very high fertility in other groups. And the whole discourse around disastrous overpopulation or the disaster that we will face because of the decreasing size of the population. These are just not accurate discourse. They should not be the centerpiece of our focus and discussions around the population policies and what should be doing in terms of addressing what are the needs of each and every single individual. You heard that the numbers are not important. Each and every single individual of those numbers is a human being, and the rights of that person should be the centerpiece of the discourse. Whether we are talking about the SDGs or we are talking about the national policies or so on and so forth. There are groups of countries that they wish to have a higher population growth, higher fertility, like Turkey, like Germany, like Japan, Korea, Canada, There are several countries in the world that they wish to have higher population growth, higher fertility, official population policy of the government is. And then we have a group of countries that they wish to have a lower fertility and lower population growth. Pakistan, Nigeria, Argentina. This is the reality of the current situation of the population policies. Our message at UNFPA is that irrespective of the population policy of the country, whether the country wish to have higher growth, higher fertility, or lower growth, lower fertility, the individual rights of women should be respected. Women and girls should have access to information and services on sexual and reproductive health so that they can make the right choice based on their preferences and based on what they feel is appropriate for their life. And of course, governments can apply different encouraging or discouraging policies. That's the government's sovereign right. But should not at all any of those policies make an infringement of the individual rights of women and girls around the world. And let's look at it. Each and every single individual should be the focus for our policy making. For example, we still have a lot of challenges that need to be addressed. Climate change is seriously, and we can feel it and see it on a daily basis in news or in our daily life. Poverty is still around parts of the world. Inequality is a serious issue in several parts of the world and between the countries. Those are elements to be addressed for sure. But again and again, the emphasis should be in everything we do. What we need to focus is individual rights on each and every single person, making the life better for all of them. Again, thank you so very much for being with us in this function and looking forward to hearing more panel discussion. I hope I have not exceeded my 3 minutes. Thank you.
I deliberately did not mention the 3-minute mark, and I think it was the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Mohtashami, for the very strong messages you delivered. It will stay with me. It's not about how many we are, but it's about our qualities. Thank you for reminding that once again. We'll move to our next speaker now. I'll invite him to the stage to deliver his remarks. A close partner of UNFPA Türkiye, on behalf of the Ministry of Family and Social Services, Mr. Cem Uraldi, is joining us. He is the Director General of Family and Community Services. Welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you. Kendimi daha iyi ifade edip
To be able to express myself better, I'll speak in Turkish if you allow me. Distinguished guests, first of all, I would like to start by conveying the greetings of our esteemed minister. Actually, I have prepared a text for my speech. We could speak through the ready-made text, but the former speakers already mentioned important topics, important facts. I have listened to them all, and after thinking around those figures, I just wanted to speak more sincerely and more spontaneously. So please excuse me, but I would like to just say something very spontaneous. We mentioned the figure of 8 billion. As far as I can understand, this is a bit scary, and it's also triggering alarm somewhere. International organizations are trying to solve the problems all around. Maybe it can be linked to this population increase. But whatever the current problems of the 7 billion or 8 billion, they were the same problems when we were 5 billion, 4 billion. It's just an increase in numbers, as it seems. The problems may still the same. Previously, the policies have been identified as per the figures of population and they have put into practice. We have tried. We have tried to plan the population increase. We have tried to control the population increase. But it seems like we couldn't achieve that in terms of the numbers, and the problems are still continuing in the same scale. And also it shows us that at some point we failed at solving the problems. The main problem here is not about solving the problems, but by keeping the population at some point. The main point is, regardless of the current population, each geography has its own cultural aspects, humanitarian aspects, humane aspects. With a tailor-made approach, we need to implement the policies. Each and every of those 8 billion is valuable to us, and I believe all of those human beings have the right to have equal access and live honorably. I believe you would also agree with me. As in our country, in all the geographies that we are in interaction with, it's important to have collaboration and cooperation. We need to do our best to increase the welfare of all those people, and we need to just play our own role. We just need to implement our policies to fulfill our obligations, both in our country and in the geographies that we are in interaction with. Actually, what we need to do not to focus on the figures of population, but also to focus on the rights and equal access of people so that they would live at the level of welfare that they deserve. Today, the population policies are different. It may be divided into two, as mentioned by the distinguished representative. The countries may have different approaches with regards to the population numbers. Also, we have this distinction in the population increase per the countries. We see that if in a country you can increase the life quality, the welfare, if you can do so, and if you can provide them with equal opportunities and equal environment, then the population wouldn't be a problem after some time. There are those developed countries, and in all those, there is no serious problem, as it seems, with regards to the population increase, because they are already at a certain level in terms of their welfare. A young population, increasing population, could still pave the way for the solutions. What we need to focus on at that point is that in some geographical areas, rather than control the population, rather than trying to decrease the population at the global scale, our aim should be to provide with equal opportunities and living standards for all people across the globe. I would like to conclude my 3 minutes with a last example. Just next to us, there is a humanitarian crisis going on in a neighboring country of ours. And with the supports at various scales of various international organizations, we are dealing with this crisis, but it's the consequences of the crisis. We are trying to rehabilitate the consequences. It's not about elimination of the crisis. The mechanisms to eliminate the crisis all at once do not function. We are stuck at that point. If the international policies continue at the level of various countries, the decisions made, action plans to be created wouldn't be that impactful if we do not collaborate. I believe if we adopt this approach, it would be much more impactful. Thank you so much for listening to my speech.
Nature of live events, there's still planning going on as we're doing everything live, but that's also the beauty of it. It's happening all in front of you, and once again, I'm glad we're all here together. Thank you for your remarks once again, sir. Our last speaker, Mr. Rauf Denktaş, Director General of Multilateral Economic Affairs from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is here with us. Mr. Denktaş will also deliver his opening speech.
Thank you. Well, I see in the program that I was given 5 minutes instead of 3. That's because probably our hosts knew they wouldn't be able to stop Mediterranean citizen from expressing its problems in such a short time. Anyways, Ambassador Schultz, Director, Representative Mohtashami, thank you as our hosts. We really appreciate your efforts to organize this very important event. It is a great pleasure for me to participate in it indeed, and I'm also very privileged to address you all here on behalf of the Turkish Foreign Ministry. I also take this opportunity to congratulate UNFPA for the announcement for the first time this year of the Day of the 8 billion. In today's global world, everything seems to be moving at an unprecedented pace with technological transformation and everything that is related, diseases. This is, at least to my mind, a very scary trend. When you said, think about it, I did, and I'm scared. But there is a but. The problem is the exponential growth of the world population is in only one important aspect. The problem is that every single one of that 8 billion should be counted. And hence the importance of UNFPA's work. Ambassador Schultz and I were both in New York before these posts and had the chance to witness firsthand how important, how critical the job of UNFPA is. Conflicts, migration, climate change, pandemic, economic inequalities, financial instabilities, and now for the past several months, or even a little bit more than that, global food insecurity. Now, so our problems, our challenges are also growing in the same trend, in the same pace. And unfortunately, we're facing all of these challenges at once. They do affect our joint efforts to ensure universal access to healthcare, education, housing, sanitation, water, food and energy, everything. I can keep you here all day counting our challenges. As the average global lifespan has risen in the recent past, now we need to feed a bigger population, but not only that, for a longer period. As Secretary General rightfully underlined, for a world in crisis, rescuing the Sustainable Development Goals must be our highest common priority. But I think now it is about time that we acknowledge that we're really lagging behind and we're about to miss that target, the 2030 targets, as things stand. So I think the first thing to do here is that acknowledge, that's the fact, and then redouble our efforts in all these aspects in every single sustainable development goal. And of course, needless to say, this is a burden that no country can shoulder on its own. As Turkey, we're working hard to contribute to the global development efforts. In addition to what you have heard on the news, our efforts to make sure to support the UN plan to make sure that grain is brought out of Ukraine. We're also taking part in the relevant, in the larger context, multilateral food security initiatives, be it at the UN, G20, and other platforms. And we do appreciate, I must state it here, Germany's initiative to organize the recent Global Food Security Ministerial, which our Deputy Minister of Agriculture participated. This, I think, is a very complimentary and very important effort on your side, and we're happy to join in on that. On our part, we have a group under the G20 as five emerging economies in the G20, Mexico, Indonesia, Korea, Turkey, and Australia, have decided to set up 10 years ago the MICTA organization, the MICTA gathering. And this year is our presidency, our chairmanship. We took it over back in March, and we decided that our priorities, the chairmanship priorities for this year, would be global health, food insecurity, effective migration management, all of which relate to UNFPA's critical work. I know a short speech is the best speech, but let me say a few words on Turkey-UNFPA relations. We cherish these relations a lot. We have celebrated last year the 50th anniversary of them, so it's a golden jubilee, I guess. but our joint work covers a wide range of projects from reproductive health and rights to gender equality and to prevention of violence against women, all very critical issues. Our Ministry of Health did make annual contributions, voluntary annual contributions to the UNFPA between 2008 and 18, I guess. But there were some budgetary issues. But this year, the Foreign Ministry stepped in to make a symbolic contribution. This is basically something modest to express our support to you, and hopefully in the coming years that will be in much bigger figures. Our cooperation with UNFPA is not only limited to Turkey. We are also hosting the regional office for Eastern Europe and Central Asia in Istanbul for the past just a little bit more than 10 years. The very presence of the office in Turkey is a testimony to our good cooperation. So I must express our sincere appreciation for also taking this opportunity to the Syrians in Turkey. I trust that our close cooperation will be further enhanced in the years ahead, and I'm here today to express my government's commitment and support for healthier societies around the globe. And lastly, I must thank Germany and UNFPA for this important event, which is very helpful in increasing the visibility of the issue and raising awareness, a critical component of a critical fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Denktaş, once again. All right. You've heard from all our speakers and their opening speeches. Many thanks again for all the valuable insights and inputs. We'll now move forward with the program. We'll continue with an address by our special guest. Yes, that nod is everything to me. That means, yes, the connection is ready to go. So thank you, Zeynep, for nodding from over there. Ms. HazalKaya is joining us. Those of you who are avid movie fans already know about her artistic talents, her boundless artistic talents, but I must say Ms. Kaya is also a valuable supporter of UNFPA Türkiye. She's a friend of UNFPA Türkiye. She's an honorary ambassador of UNFPA Türkiye. We're very glad to have her joining us live via Zoom. We so wish it was here in person, but we're still glad we can make it happen. HazalKaya is in Istanbul and is with us live now. Thank you for joining, HazalKaya. We're all ears. Is the mic off by any chance? Yes, it is. Here we go. Nope. I think it's still off.
Merhaba.
Harika. Şimdi duyuyoruz.
Duyuyor musun?
Can you hear me now? Yes, we can hear you now. Hello, everyone. We are listening to you. We are just curious what you are going to tell us. Thank you so much for participating, even though through Zoom. And from Istanbul, we are very happy to have you. I just would want to be with you there in person, but because of the reasons that I couldn't manage, I just joined through Zoom. It's great to celebrate the World Population Day with you. Being a goodwill ambassador of UNFPA is something that I'm very proud of and I'm talking about everywhere. So it's a great honor to be with you here today. Thank you so much. So HazalKaya is very well known with her skills and activities in the area of art, and also she's an activist working for the vulnerable groups, especially. During the panel session, we will be talking around it, HazalKaya. 8 billion people in an ideal world would be equal to 8 billion opportunities. Should we say would be? Should we say I hope it would be? But in an ideal world, 8 billion people would be equal to 8 billion opportunities. How do we reach that point based on your experiences with the vulnerable groups? Based on your emphasis on the inequalities, can we listen to your thoughts and what's in your heart? 8 billion people. Yes, as you say, I wish it would mean 8 billion hopes or opportunities, but it may not be the case. I could participate in the field activities once, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But of course, the figures were conveyed all the time, statistics were all conveyed all the time by UN to me. And I am shocked in the face of all this discrimination and inequalities that we are facing. When we go there and talk to the vulnerable groups one by one, we realize that we would never know if we are going to be in their shoes. In 5 minutes, we can be disabled. In 5 minutes, all of a sudden, we can be in the category of refugees or migrants. So being with them is very important. Listening to their problems is very important because you feel it in your heart. And once you listen to those all, you just sense this light of hope in all this darkness, because the will to live, to sustain life and to be together would also pave the way for a big fight. It would trigger a big combat against all these inequalities. When we are with them, when we raise awareness with people, I can imagine what would be the wonderful consequences. And what we need to do maybe is this. Once we talk about raising awareness, it would mean like uttering a couple of sentences and then stepping back. But it's not. It's not. I am criticized, and sometimes they tell me that, okay, you may not say something on this topic too, but I say, why? I see something, it can turn into something very dangerous soon. It can be turned into a weapon, a tool that is wrongly used. We should be able to say, this is dangerous, this may be the beginning of bias, prejudices. This would bear some consequences for you in the future. This is what we need to say when we see a problem, even though it's not about us. So I believe pinpointing such issues is very important. Maybe by warning each other and minor issues, by loving one another, we can achieve something. We can tell the other person that there is nothing to be pissed off about. What the other person does is actually cute. You can actually feel empathy, sympathy. By doing that, we can turn these 8 billion people into 8 billion opportunities and hopes. Dreaming of that, I don't know whether it's ridiculous, but I believe it can be the truth. I'm also hearing about all that. I don't know whether you can hear us. We are in a wonderful garden. It's green all around, and all the participants are listening to your remarks with a great excitement. And when I'm listening, I'm hearing that. Listening with empathy. Listening to that person that is far away from you. Why is this important? And I would like to also link it to another topic. Today, among the participants, we have those representatives from the civil society. We also have representatives from the public authorities. We have diplomats with us. And for the policy making, both in Turkey and in the world, they play important roles. So we have important guests. Listening with empathy, why is it important? To understand one another and also to find a solution to those gigantic problems, war, conflict, inequalities. To be able to take the right steps, listening with empathy is important. And on the other hand, it's also that. It's very humane. What I'm going to say is very humane. We need to accept. Sometimes we cannot understand. Yes, we use all of our skills to make empathy. Even though we are good at listening, sometimes we may not be able to accept. We may not be able to understand, to be more proper. We don't understand where they are coming from, what they are trying to say. Sometimes what they say is not suitable to us. Sometimes we do not have the same point of view of the world. And we need to see that this is not an obstacle against living together. We shouldn't force our own ideas, our own thoughts. This is how I interpret the scene. We can exist in the same place. It doesn't mean that I am superior to you. You are superior to me. It's not that I am stronger or you are weaker or just vice versa. We can exist together. We can live together equally, even though we are different. There is no problem with that. We don't need to like each other, but we need to respect one another and we need to contribute to living together. There is one single world and we are about to be 8 billion. Otherwise, it's impossible to live together. And let me talk about the figures. Each time I receive the statistics, I live a new, I don't know how to call it, but my horizons are enlarging because since the beginning, of the meeting as well, we always say that these are not figures, these are not numbers. Once we start seeing them as people, the statistics become very striking, very impactful. And from time to time, it's very easy to be desperate in front of all these numbers. But on the other hand, we have the motto of leaving no one behind. And it gives us the power. It creates an awareness. It pushes you to do something. You think that you need to do something about global warming, you need to do something about climate change, war, conflict, inequalities, so on and so forth. You feel like you need to do something. By looking at the statistics, sometimes it's really pissing you off, but we need to live together. We need to be understanding of one another, and we need to, even though we do not approve one another, even though we do not like each other, we need to find ways, we need to search for ways of living together, because even the climate is telling us the same thing. When London is 42 degrees, it's telling us something, right? Or when there is a crisis or conflict breaking out in Ukraine, when Syrian crisis broke out, the world is telling us that you need to live together, you need to do something. We don't know how you would do it, but you need to find a way to live together. Even if you do not live together by creating equal opportunities, then we are all going to be devastated. The world is telling us to do something. And all together, especially previously, you mentioned that there are many diplomats, many important representatives among us. They need to be our voices. We need to be the voices of the community. We need to strive all together. And we are expecting sincere contributions of everyone as a goodwill ambassador. So at one point, while listening to her, I thought, what would a world look like if it was governed by the artists? We wouldn't be able to manage it. We have lots of other things to do. We wouldn't be able to do it. We do lots of things, movies and other things. We wouldn't be able to do it. An important call for you, that's why. The bureaucrats, diplomats, you are in the center of a problem solving. You need to be our voices. Last of all, a call. The world is telling us that you need to find a way to live together. You need to listen to one another. You need to find a way to live together. We are about to be 8 billion people. We are going to be a big family. How would it be possible to ensure equal opportunities for everyone? And what would be the role to be played by arts? What would it be? Actually, if it's not hindered, if it's not censored, arts are doing great. And it has done so in all the periods. It is still doing so. We artists, I don't want to call myself as an artist, but artists are doing their best. People at the forefront, they are using their popularity and they are acting very wisely, I would say. But at that point, the real issue here is that we should have an environment, a world that we are not scared, that we are not silenced. We should be able to tell our stories, and we shouldn't be able to select among the stories that would be appropriate to talk about. If we are not scared, we are very good. Sometimes there are harsh stories, irritating stories, but they may touch upon the hearts of people. It would put tears in the eyes of people. It would change the lives of people. It would change the viewpoints of people, even though they are harsh stories. So there are lots of artists who are willing to tell their stories. This is their life. This is how they can survive, by creating a product of art. And when we are not silenced, when we are not in fear, we are already doing our best. Apart from that, as I said before, all the diplomats, all the politicians, if they create the space for us, then we have endless stories and endless love, by the way, of creation. I think there is no other thing more valuable while living, while trying to live together with 8 billion, if everyone does what they love, what they are passionate about, if they do it with all the love, with all the excitement, if they create in such a manner, everyone, if they can respect one another and deal with one another, this is the way of living together. This is the way of creating as well. What else to say? Thank you so much, HazalKaya.
Sağ olun bizimle olduğunuz için. Çok memnun olduk biz de aynı şekilde.
To all, our greetings to you all from Ankara to Istanbul. Actually, we don't know how to call it. but she was here virtually, but she was also here with all of her heart. And hopefully next time I'll be there in person. Hope to see you later on. We have listened to HazalKaya. Thank you so much.
Big applause. I'm sure she's going to hear. How are we doing? It's hot, I know, but we're good? All right, let's keep going. I know you've been all impatient for our mini panel discussion this afternoon, and that's where we're going to go now. I'm sure it's going to be quite a thought-provoking discussion. The world population is set to reach 8 billion, and we'll discuss what it means for people and the planet. I'm joined by a stellar panel. I'll announce their names, and I'll do it this way. I'll first announce their names, they'll take their place, and then I will get to see after all of them. They are representatives from academia, civil society, and youth. So we'll get to hear what they have to say. Professor Banu Ergöçmen from Hacettepe University Institute of Population Studies is with us. May I have Professor Ergöçmen join us, please? Yes. Mr. Vural Çakır, President of INGEV, Human Development Foundation, is also with us today. Welcome, Mr. Çakır, and thank you for being here. Please. And İlayda Taşçıoğlu, who is way far at the back, UN Young Leader for Sustainable Development Goals. She is with us now. Please join us. Please come over to the stage, İlayda. Thank you for being with us. All right. On that note, I'm also going to take my seat and we'll start. A very quick the sentence over there. Okay, here we go. A very quick housekeeping notes for all of you here, and also to our panelists. Welcome once again. It's wonderful to have you here. We have about 10 minutes per speaker, but we'll do an interactive discussion, and then about 10 minutes or so. Please shout, scream, anything if I'm going over time. But another 10 minutes at the end of our round here. We'll open the floor to questions or comments, as long as you promise to be brief. All right, that being said, welcome again. Wonderful to have you here. I mentioned the numbers before, Professor, that the world population is set to reach 8 billion in November, and then it's projected to grow. So I'd like to hear your response, what it means for people and the planet, and what is it that we need to keep in mind now as we're watching these numbers and discovering the story behind those numbers.
I will start again. Thank you, Afşin. I would also like to thank you to the UNFPA and to the Embassy of Federal Republic of Germany for this joint event that marks the World Population Day. I appreciate being given this opportunity. I will take you back a little bit in history. Don't worry, it's not going to be a long one, but I just wanted to give the background of the issue. The population change, the change in the size, the components that play a role in this change, and the determinants of this change have always attracted the attention of societies and the world finally. In fact, this has been the case throughout history, starting from the early ages. Throughout much of history, human populations have been characterized by relative stability. High birth rates and high death rates have fluctuated around a low growth equilibrium. Dramatic changes in population growth were followed first by the agricultural revolution and then by the industrial revolution, and gained momentum from the second half of the 20th century. Since then, the world population tripled from 2.5 billion in 1950 to over 6 billion at the end of the last millennium. Improvements in food supply, progress in technology, changes in health and hygiene triggered unprecedented population growth. Today, population is more than 3 times larger than it was in the mid-20th century. Today, the world's population is projected to reach 8 billion on November 15, 2022. In addition, estimates are the population size. Estimates for the population sizes will be 8.5 million. It's going to be 8.5 million in 8 years' time, and it will reach 9.7 billion in the middle of the century. So we are still growing. If you look at the doubling time, which is an important metric for population issues, it is the time it takes for a population to double itself in size. It took around 37 years since 1950 to double. That is, it makes 1987 when the population has surpassed 5 billion. Thereafter, it is estimated that more than 70 years will be required for the global population to double again, rising to over 10 billion by 2059. I would also like to point out that July 11, 1987 is an important date when the world population reached 5 billion people, and that this date designated as World Population Day, and it has become an annual event to draw attention to global population problems as we do it today. As regards the population growth rate, after doubling time, we come to population growth rate. The story is a little different. The trend line is downwards. We do not have high population growth rates anymore as we had in the past. For example, when we look back in the 20th century, it was around 2% during the period of 1960s. Between the period of 1962 and 1965, the annual population growth rate was about 2%. But when we come today, the pace of population growth has slowed by almost half, owing to reduced levels of fertility. In 2020, the population growth rate fell by 1% per year for the first time since 1950. Since 1950 means last mid-century. And we know that the projections tell us that it will continue to slow in the next few decades and through the end of this, until the end of this century. Overall, we can say that mortality levels have declined, fertility levels are low, and the population growth rate has slowed down. The population will continue to increase with the population momentum of the past growth. The population size of the world is expected to reach almost 10 billion by the mid-century. Naturally, there is diversity in the indicators. I have been talking about in an overall way, but when we go in detail, we can see the differences in indicators. Not all societies, not all countries, not all regions have the same patterns. This is just a short overview in general over time for the world. What has brought us to this point, to this phase? We can say that fertility, mortality, and migration are the components of population change. Changes in fertility and mortality levels have been functional in this transformation. Actually, the movement of human populations experiencing high birth and high death rates to very much lower ones is an important issue in this aspect. Demographers call this demographic transition. These declines in fertility and mortality levels happen together when fundamental changes from being predominantly rural to being predominantly urban, from an agricultural structure to an industrialized structure. Through this transition, populations first increase in size because they experience a period of population growth due to natural increase. Mortality declines first with some time lag with fertility following it, and during this period there is a growth in the population size grows, but then when fertility declines start, and then they come to a level at a bottom level. The annual, actually, when fertility begins to fall, the annual rate of growth starts to drop as well. Globally, these issues brings us to life expectancy. Life expectancy reached 73 years in 2020, an increase of almost 9 years since 1990. Further reductions in mortality are projected to result in an average longevity as well of around 77 years globally around mid-century. Life expectancy at birth for women is another issue. We have some difference between expectancies of women and men. The average fertility issue is another thing that we should focus on. The average fertility of the world's population stood at 2.3 births per woman over lifetime. This has fallen from about 5 births per woman in 1950. So we see the changes when we come to our day. Global fertility is projected to decline further to 2.1 births per woman by 2050 again. So but the population will continue to grow because even if fertility levels come down, the population will continue to grow with the momentum of past growth that have been experienced. So while the subject of the past was population growth, now it is low fertility. The issue is low fertility, the change in age structures that has been brought with these changes in mortality and fertility changes, and the issues brought up by these changes are our concerns, as we can say, for today.
May I quickly jump in at this point and ask you briefly to articulate a concept which is also crucial to make sense of what we're discussing today. That's demographic resilience. I would love to hear from you a good definition of the concept and also how societies can build demographic resilience.
Okay, thank you. So I will leave Turkey to your further questions then. if
sure,
you want,
whichever one
is
comfortable.
About Turkey, but
sure.
Maybe we can leave it to the question.
We can hear the Turkey remarks and also demographic resilience remarks.
Let's go back to your question about demographic resilience. We have heard that this is an opportunity. From the speeches made before me, we must remember that population science means opportunity. In other words, 8 million people means 8 million opportunities. Or, for example, if we say, with an example of Turkey, we can say that our population size is 84 million, and this is an opportunity for Turkey, 84 million opportunity. This means 84 million opportunity. So I see it as a harnessing time. It is time for harnessing these opportunities. We can get some fruitful results from this huge numbers. Of course, no one country is self-sufficient in our especially increasingly interdependent world. Especially strengthening collaboration between countries is critical. Shared solutions are needed for this for using this as an opportunity, for making out profit from this opportunity. We need shared solutions, and we should address common challenges to avoid vulnerabilities. We must all work together to address poverty, discrimination, violence, and exclusion, and other barriers that are denying millions of people around the world their rights and choices. So at this point, maybe we need data to do these. Maybe
after, I would love for our other speakers to follow up on your points, because we're talking about harnessing the opportunity and how we can overcome the barriers such as violence, such as inequality. And you're also saying that no country can tackle this alone, and you're also highlighting the importance of cooperation. I will go back to the data point in the next round, but here at this point, I'd like to turn to Mr. Vural Çakır, because this is exactly up your alley. From the sustainability perspective, what does it mean? We're going to be 8 billion people, a world of 8 billion.
Okay, thank you, Afshin. First of all, I would like to congratulate World Population Day for all of us, and I hope that we will be also enjoying the same celebration by 2037 for the 9 billion of the people, providing that life expectancy exceeding 780, in that day. And I hope also the planet will be enjoying the celebration of 10 billion toward the end of century, if it is still exists. So, I mean, the very first one is I am very much fan of the human development or humanized development vision. And for me, the sustainable development goals are the pathway to realize this humanized development. And let's go to the basic. I mean, and the basic is, we talk about the 1 billion increase in the population during the last 11 years, just as we heard from Mr. Representative. So, since 2000, the world per capita income has more than doubled. So while increasing population, the world per capita income or average income has been increased even more. So that world is very much resourceful, very much capable to produce resources, to produce income, the basic for all the population of the 8 billion. So this is the part that we have to be very optimistic for ourselves, for our planet. But it's not enough, as you probably all know. Recently, a recent progress report has been published about the realization of sustainable development goals. And the report mentioned the concerns, the serious concern to get these goals by 2030. There are serious concerns. And for example, the first time during the last 2 decades, extreme poverty has been increased. Now we are talking about approximately 600 million living in extreme poverty, and also the hunger, the number 2 of the sustainable development goals, elimination the hunger fully, and it also 1 of 10 people in the world has been experiencing hunger now, of course, with the contribution of the war and pandemic together. In these days, we have been working on the concept of precaria, let's say something similar to proletaria, or say precarity, together with Istanbul Policy Center of Sabancı University. And it's amazing, or it's horrible to see that how much of many of the people living in precarity in Turkey and in all over the world. So so on one side we have a very, very good capability to produce income in this world, in this planet, but on the other side There are things that going not well. And yeah, okay, that's the infant mortality, the health, it's good, and it's nice to see there. But I mean, we cannot be satisfied with these things while the basic is there. I spent, almost more than 25 years in the research industry, and then closed that part of my life and turned to this committed human development vision as a non-profit organization. But I brought a few takeaways from my research experience because I live day and night with the figures always. And one thing is that what I called as mind poisoners. Mind poisoners. Per capita, it's a mind poisoner. Average is a mind poisoner. Total is a mind poisoner. Of course, we may use this, some kind of benchmark, etc. But if we try to think, if we start to think with these mind poisoners, we miss everything. We miss the reality because these are the hiding words of the reality. We cannot talk with this. And we have to avoid, as much as possible, of course, these mind poisoners. So, coming from the, let's say, $12,000, this is the world per capita income, even significantly more than that of Turkey in these days. But these inequalities, what about the inequalities? So inequalities in this period mostly remain the same or increased while we talk about this world capability of producing per capita famous $12,000. So inequalities remain same or increase among population, among countries, within companies, between genders, and so on. So you all know the famous figures of that 1% of the world population possess 82% of the revenue produced in a year in a world. 26 families possess the welfare of the world, almost equal to half of the population. So what kind of world is this? What kind of system we produce? Because it is, even its design on the paper is very difficult. Only 26 families have the wealth, let's say, of the half of the total population. It's even you try to design such a system, it's difficult to finalize it, realize it. Anyway, so it's not only this, of course. Highest income country, per capita income of highest income country is 102 times more than the lowest income country. So among countries, let's say. So continue with the companies. What happened to companies? Because they provide the salaries, etc., to the people. So what happened to salaries within the companies? Since 1980 or so on, the average employee real salary have been increased 12%, while the CEO, estimate or guess what? While the CEO salaries has been increased in that period toward 940%. So this is the world, we are talking about. It's very good to have $12,000 per capita for a well-being of world population, where for a, let's say, definition of good life, it's fine. But, this is, and I don't want to go into the genders because you all know and everybody mentioned about the gender inequalities, although the Human Development reports of UNDP indicate some slow increase basing on especially schooling and especially and particularly of mortality increase and mortality rate. It's okay, but in general we all know that we need 150 years to equalize earning of woman with man. 150 years you have to work, option, I don't know, to equalize. Maybe it's better for you, but
150 years
I'm talking about average.
Horrible to me, way too long for any of us to bear. And I also have another very sad reminder that the 2030 agenda is only 8 short years away.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'd like to now bring the discussion to that and briefly hear from you, because and thank you again for a very striking picture of the inequality we're facing. around the globe.
Okay,
And with that in mind, I'm curious what you think the role of civil society organizations, what role can they play in reaching sustainable development goals? Part of
okay,
our
just a
agenda
few add to this picture. You again all know, but also mentioned the previous speakers about the climate crisis. Again, we have a very good Paris Agreement, and we have a very good agreement for 2030. But the report shows not a promising improvement in that part. And who will be impacted first? Yes, from the climate crisis. It's estimated 200 million, of course, the poorest and disadvantaged, let's say, the part of the world will be impacted first from all these issues. And for the displacement, forced displacement, and we, Turkey, and our foundation as well, have been experiencing all the, let's say, all the parts, all the aspects of this part. And it's true for all the world that is also accompanied with the xenophobia, racism, and increase in all this hate speech, discrimination, including in Turkey as well, and we have observed as deal. And I have to say that we have a very low voice to manage with these. We generally keep our silence in low profile, while all this racism, etc., load very loudly, let's say, speak very loudly. This is another thing about that we are going to tackle about this. So I can conclude a few words coming from your question. Many of the world issues are not country-based. It's multi-country, global, or international. But the solutions are weighted along countries. And the current world order even is not capable to stop a war impacting all over the population, all over the 8 billion. And we cannot stop it. It continues, whatever we do. So it is, and it is one of the reasons these 8 billion people is suffer regarding the food crisis, although the Turkish great achievements in these days, it will continue. Probably this suffer while the war continues in that area. So the world order is not matching with the world problem. This is one issue, and we have to find to address with probably strengthen. It's not easy, of course. Strengthen the UN organization over the countries. There's no other way I see, and this is the way that civil society organization contribute. And the second one, which is very much important for me, again, the definition. All the climate crisis, etc., and many of these things, including this distribution of income around the world, is very much related with the underlying assumption or perception of well-being or good life of the people. Now, 200 million companies in the world, 45,000 stock exchange companies, works for the next month profitable growth. Of course, they need to transformation. They like the transformation, but for it's a long-run issue. And for the private industries or the companies, these amount of the companies, obviously, the short-run financial monthly results are very, very, very crucial than the long-run transformation. And this and all the consumers, for the 8 million or majority of them, their underlying assumption or perception is that ever-increasing consumption, branded consumption and status consumption. This is what I call is that ideology of marketing. This is the dominating ideology of the world, and the second one is maybe a very strategic macro one, but I would like to say that without dealing with the perception of well-being, perception of good life, right, changing this, it is very difficult. And the last one is about the civil society organization. I said that there is a gap in between these two, world order and the current issues. The civil society organizations should fulfill partly this gap, but they need some kind of, let's say, enablers. One of the enablers, where is their role, their desk in the table? Do we have a desk in the table or not? Probably we don't. That's just supporting. The second one, accessibility, is right to freedom, the right to speech, to freedom, and right to assembly freely, and also access to funds. And the final verse for me about my personal experience for the funds coming for Syrian under temporary protection in Turkey. I had a chance to observe these in the recent years, and I a little bit surprised what a long distance in between the original source of fund and the final beneficiary. What a many stop-bys in there. This is one of the address, but we need to fulfill that. So it's okay. And sorry.
No, thank you. It was a very detailed picture of the inequality being faced in pretty much all societies, and I'm thankful that you made a very strong call to address that at all levels. I do appreciate your input there, and of course, it's impossible to address the question at hand without bringing in the perspective of the youth. Ilayda, thank you again for being here. A world of 8 billion, what does it mean for the planet and the people? That's our main driving question. And I'm curious what you think it looks like from the perspective of the youth. And I briefly have to say that there's this cliche, the youth are the leaders of tomorrow. The youth hates it the moment they hear it. They're like, no, we're leaders of today. You have to listen to us now. You have to take into account what we have to say now. So tell us, the youth, what does the youth think about 8 billion and where we're headed as one big human family on this planet?
Thank you so much, Afshin. I'm already triggered, but I will do my best. Yeah, maybe I should dedicate my PhD thesis to that question, but I will, again, do my best. I have a couple of hats today with me. I'm a PhD student, I'm a human rights lawyer, I'm one of the UN Young Leaders, but the biggest hat I want to show off today is a simple one, the hat of a young, confused person with a lot of anxiety. And to do justice, it's a hot, beautiful day. I've finally seen the beautiful garden of the German embassy, and I've decided to take you down a tour of an emotional roller coaster my generation is going through to answer that question. So when we think about 8 billion, it's an important number. A couple of things step forth. First, joy. Obviously, we're excited to welcome the newcomers, and I can't wait to see the gender equal, just, sustainable future they will be building. But then comes the crippling, chronic, collective anxiety and anger. As I was growing up, when I was learning about the climate crisis, which was named at the time as global warming, we were given a big bad wolf, which was the growing population. Now that I've grown up, and having been studying sustainability for a couple of years now, I'm seeing the big bad wolf is not the growing population, but it's somewhere else. I can guarantee you, as young people, we're not anxious or frustrated because of the growing population, but we're anxious and frustrated because of how painfully slow world leaders are taking action, because we know and we see time after time angry young people calling world leaders and businesses and international organizations to take action and not only talk the talk, but also walk the walk. We're angry and anxious because we do know, no matter how hard I try, no matter how young people try, with our little sustainable habits, with our metal straws and reusing and recycling, we will never be able to delete the carbon footprint that a world leader or a celebrity makes with a private jet trip. Also, as a young woman who have grown up in Turkey, I'm anxious and frustrated because I'm seeing some of the very important, very complex world problems like the climate crisis is finally understood when the heat waves strike Europe or North America. Meanwhile, for years and years, indigenous communities have been struck with those heat waves. Women and girls have been overrepresented in climate migration, and high-income countries have been importing their waste and washing their hands off from the issues. These things actually scare us more than the growing population, and they're giving us more anxiety, not the 8 billion, not the magical world. And after anxiety comes anger. You were very right, Afshin, when you said young people hate it when we're told, oh, you're the leaders of tomorrow. Actually, I want you to listen to that sentence very carefully because there's an undertone there that we need to explore. What it means is, we're giving high fives and praises all the time and we're sick of it, honestly. I don't want to hear how inspirational I am. I don't want to hear how I'm the leader of tomorrow. I'm today's leader. Because when I'm told I'm the leader of tomorrow, it means this. It's not your time. You better be an intern and run some errands and wait for your time to come. You do not belong in this decision-making table. You have to wait a little bit. And we're sick and tired of hearing that. What we want is meaningful youth engagement. It's the magical word for us. And I believe the 8 billion is showing us an opportunity to make meaningful youth engagement a reality, actually. What does that mean? We have a lot of powerful people in this beautiful garden right now. You're representing amazing institutions, powerful institutions. I want each and every one of you to ask yourselves an honest and open question. Do you think your policies and organizations properly represent and reflect the perspectives of youth? How many young people do you see in the meetings that you join? And if you see them, are they the interns that are taking notes and setting your Zoom meetings, or are they actually given a seat at the table or given time and chance and platform and resources to make change or to tell their truth? It's not that hard, but it's a real commitment, meaningful youth engagement. It requires structural changes, and it's more than inviting a young person to a panel every now and then. It's important to give them, again, chance, time, and resources. I also have to warn you against tokenism, which is what we often experience as youth activists and young people in platforms like this. Don't get me wrong, I'm very excited and grateful to be here, but I do know that I stand here humbly, but I recognize my privilege. I'm here because I got quality education, I can speak English fluently, I had resources to access these platforms, but I will never ever be able to tell the truth of indigenous youth who have to be climate refugees or other vulnerable youth communities. I will never be able to tell their truth. So it's important to truly internalize diversity and representation because they matter, and without diverse representation and intersectionality, we can't make meaningful progress. I heard some very wise words from a good friend and the former African Union Youth Envoy, Aya Chebim. She told me one time, when young people promise, young people deliver. I can't agree more. I think you should believe in young people. It's hard, I know. Sometimes it feels like we're speaking different languages. I sometimes have trouble understanding my Gen Z sister. What the hell she's saying, I have no idea. But we can find a midway, and we can build a sustainable and gender equal and just future together if we have younger generations on board. And lastly, as our mini emotional roller coaster is ending, of course we're anxious and angry, but we're also hopeful. We need hope and resilience more than ever, in my opinion. Do I still believe we can achieve sustainable development goals? 100%. Have we lost this match yet? Not really. Will world hunger vanish from the face of Earth miraculously by 2030? Not probably, but I believe we can still make a difference. And for that to happen, we need younger generations on board. We're still hopeful, we're still resilient, and we need each other. Whenever I'm desperate or pessimistic about the future of the world, I always remind myself the motto of the feminist movement in Turkey. I chant that motto. It's solidarity keeps us alive. Dayanışma yaşatır, dayanışma güçlendirir. Solidarity keeps us alive, and solidarity gives us strength. So with lots of love and solidarity, we're at the end of our mini tour of the emotional roller coaster of millennials and Gen Z. I can maybe reply that way.
Sorry, Leila, I know you hate it when people tell you, oh, that's so inspiring. I have to admit, I hope I'm not offending you, but that was inspiring. But I do hope that it is translated into action, because those who will take action are here now watching us. I'm curious, before I do our final round, any of you want to say anything, ask any questions, anything you have in mind, any burning questions? Everybody's happy. That means it's a good panel then. Well, then, I will, on that note, do one final round to wrap up this conversation. And I have to say, I'm inspired by Elida's remarks here, and bringing in the youth perspective, building intergenerational alliances to reach sustainable development goals, and being aware of the fact that time is ticking. So I would like to do one last round, and just briefly, and I would love for us to stick to our 2-minute time mark. What is it that we can do today, given that the 2030 agenda is 8 short years away, given that we already know the recipe, but somehow we have trouble implementing it? What is it that we can do now to make sure that 8 billion is not just a number, but 8 billion opportunities? Professor, I'd like to start with you first. I would love for us to stick to 2 minutes each, and then we'll wrap it up. The mic.
I still believe that the story behind reaching at 8 billion is a success story. This is the evidence of great progress it offered to us. We are aware that there are challenges lying ahead. We know very well the challenges that are lying ahead. It's difficult for me because I'm slipping to this side and at the armchair. I'm sorry, going this way all the time. So we should be aware of that. We have challenges in front of us. We should go with them. Let me give you an example before I go with your question. When we think about children, think about a child. If you scold him or her all the time, if you beat him or her when he or she did something, if you behave badly, what do you get from that? And this is like for the population as well. We should. I prefer to look from the positive side. We say that we have to look beyond the numbers. Yes, we have to look beyond the numbers. We have to go beyond the numbers. But to go beyond the numbers, we need these numbers. So for me, the issue is data gathering. The issue is data issue. If we don't know the number, if we don't know the figure, if we don't know the indicator, we don't know what to go beyond. We don't know where to go beyond. We don't know what to do beyond. We need data. We need keep counting and recording. And when I say we need data, I'm talking about policies, evidence-based policies. We should use these data for evidence-based policies by taking into consideration the human rights, the right-based issues, and sexual and reproductive health rights should be taken into consideration in developing these policies. So we know the vulnerable groups. We have the numbers so that we know the vulnerable groups. We know the size of the vulnerable groups. We know the migrants. We know the asylum seekers. We know religious and ethnic minorities. With these data, we have idea about every issue that we have to focus on, that we have to take some consideration on that. So the importance lies in data for me.
Thank you very much. Data matters, and I also appreciate the message that, yes, let's go beyond the numbers, but we should know our numbers first. So thank you for the message. Mr. Tucker, please proceed. 2 minutes.
Let me continue or support what Hocam said, and the progress report also mentioned that, sorry. Okay. So just support Hocam, and the progress report of the SDGs clearly mentioned that lack of consistent, reliable, and timely data. And if you don't have the data, it's very difficult to measure the targets, but the more important is that who is accountable. Really, if you don't measure something, accountability disappears. So no one is accountable at the end while we miss the target. So one thing is very, very much important, to coordinate and mandate National Statistic Office overall, and this is one of the, let's say, the weakest point from the start of the, let's say, indicators of the sustainable development target measurement. It's another story, but we really need and urge the statistic offices and align them globally, timely, reliable, and sustainable data, and of course go beyond the averages. Not talking about the average. This is the first one. And the second one, we need to understand urgency. We talk the urgency, and I know that the Turkish presidency just organized a coordination office recently. I don't know, maybe it's a good step for Turkey.
Thank you. Very briefly, of course, very briefly, and then I'll get to you later.
A small point. When we are talking about data, I would like to say that a comparative data in time, comparative data nationally, internationally, is the must. We have to focus on this comparative data, and this comparative data should consist of gender-sensitive issues as well. The data should be this.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chakra, for reminding us the link between data-driven policy and accountability. I think it matters a lot as we move forward. İlayda, you are our final speaker today.
Okay, super briefly, I think I will resonate what you just said, Afshin, about cooperation. For me, it would be solidarity, interconnectedness, and cooperation. Or to put it in a more simple language, I would say, let's get the heck out of our clubs and talk to each other. The thing is, I'm a sexual and reproductive health and rights activist. I'm the co-founder of an NGO named We Need to Talk. We fight against period poverty and menstrual stigma, and I defend everyone's human rights to make informed decisions about their bodies. But still, climate crisis is my cause. I think we do not have the luxury anymore to say, oh, this isn't my cause, this isn't my club, and I will not get into it. We may not be the experts, we may not be well informed, but we have the responsibility to, and we must work together in an interconnected way and cooperate with each other. This is also true for, I mean, we really shouldn't expect all the duties and responsibilities from the governments, for example. And I think the German embassy and UNFPA Türkiye has definitely understood the assignment. We have representatives of a lot of different stakeholders. Businesses are also responsible. International organizations are also responsible. Civil society is also responsible. Youth organizations are also responsible. And we have to work together. So let's get out of our clubs and co-own the causes of other people. This is the only way, in my opinion, to build a just and sustainable future. I think I can summarize it that way.
Well, thank you, Professor Ergöçmen, Mr. Vural Çakır, and İlayda Eskitaşçıoğlu for your remarks. Big applause in advance before I wrap it up. As we are about to wrap this up, this was a wonderful thought exercise. I have to say, I learned so much from all of you, and I'm sure our audience, they also feel the same. There's a lot of food for thought here in your remarks. And I'm so glad we had the opportunity today to talk about how is it possible to think of 8 billion as not just numbers, but equal opportunity for all. And as we wrap it up, I'd like to, this is brief, but I really want you to leave with this message. It's from UNFPA Executive Director Dr. Natalia Kanim's words, and it goes this way. Regarding the 8 billion mark. This is a success story, not a doomsday scenario. Focusing exclusively on population totals and growth rates misses the point. In fact, people are the solution, not the problem. Investing in people, in their rights and choices, is the path to peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable societies. I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up this meeting, and I hope the message stays with you. Thank you once again for being here. Thank you, UNFPA Türkiye, and to the embassy, to the German embassy in Ankara, for bringing us together and hosting us at this beautiful garden. I'm glad we had the opportunity to make it happen in this beautiful capital of Ankara. Thanks again. We'll leave it here. It was wonderful to be with you. Goodbye.
Ben okuluma devam etmek istiyorum. Okula gitmek istiyorum. Erken yaşta evlendirilmek istemiyorum. Büyüyünce kendi kararlarımı kendim vermek istiyorum.
Mesela herkes eşit. Kız erkek eşit. Mesela yoksul fakir eşit, hepsi eşit olsun. Bir de mesela güzel bir dünya olsun.